Dynamic HTML with JavaScript. Now we are going to see the following contents of this topic, DHTML. What is DHTML? Differences between HTML and DHTML. Components. Introduction to DOM. Features, uses, advantages and disadvantages of DHTML. DHTML events, DHTML JavaScript and some example programs of DHTML. Dynamic HTML. DHTML stands for Dynamic Hypertext Markup Language. Dynamic means the contents of the web page can be customized or changed according to the user inputs. To build dynamic web pages, DHTML uses languages feature. And all these three components means HTML, CSS and scripting language. These three components are linked through document object model DOM. Document object model ID to provide a standard programming interface. DHTML is not a scripting language, but it uses different technologies of the scripting language. Here, scripting language manipulates HTML and CSS. CSS contains style rules which are responsible for the appearance of HTML content. Now let us see differences between HTML and DHTML. HTML is a markup language, whereas DHTML is not a language, but it is a set of technologies of web development. HTML is used for developing and creating web pages, and DHTML is used for creating and designing the animated and interactive web pages. HTML creates static web pages, whereas DHTML creates dynamic web pages. The files of HTML are stored with the .html or .htm extension, and the files of DHTML are stored with the .dhtm extension. HTML does not need database connectivity, whereas DHTML needs database connectivity because it interacts with users. Components of dynamic HTML. DHTML consists of 4 components and they are HTML, CSS, JavaScript and DOM. HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language and it is a client-side markup language which defines the structure of a web page with defined basic tags or elements. CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. It allows the web users or developers for controlling the style of the HTML elements or tags on the web pages. JavaScript. It is a scripting language which is run on a client side. DHTML uses JavaScript technology for accessing, controlling and manipulating the HTML elements. DOM. DOM is the document object model. It is mainly used for defining the objects and properties of all HTML elements. Now let us see a brief explanation about DOM. It is a W3C standard which is a standard interface of programming for HTML. DOM represents the web page in a structured way so that it becomes easier for programmers and users to go through the document. Using DOM, we can easily access and manipulate tags, IDs, classes, attributes or elements using commands or methods provided by the document object. In the document, we have HTML root element and this root element contains 2 elements such as head, body. In the head element, we have sub-elements, title and this sub-element contains text, whereas text can be anything. Coming to the body element, it contains some tags like hyperlink tag and header tag and so on. Here are some commonly asked questions in interviews regarding DHTML. How DHTML work with JavaScript? Using JavaScript, we can make dynamic HTML content. We can use document.write operation to show dynamic content on your web page. We wrote date function in document.write so it displays current date present in your system. Second question, what are the attributes that make up a DHTML? Here Components are also known as attributes. So the components of DHTML are HTML, CSS, JavaScript and DOM. Third question, what is DOM? What is the use of document object? DOM stands for Document Object Model. A document object represents the HTML document, and DOM can be used to access and change the content of HTML. Why use DHTML? DHTML has the ability to change a web page's look, content and style once the document has loaded on our demand, without changing or deleting everything already existing one on the browser's web page. Differentiate between static and dynamic HTML. First of all, static HTML once displayed cannot be changed. On the other hand, dynamic HTML can be changed. Secondly, static web pages cannot have database access, but dynamic pages can be connected to the database. What are the differences between DHTML and HTML? The first and foremost difference is HTML is a markup language, but DHTML is not a language. DHTML stands with combination of HTML, CSS, JavaScript and DOM, but HTML is an alone one with static. HTML cannot have any server-side code, but DHTML may contain server-side code also.
Here now we will discuss about the features of the DHTML. The main important features of the DHTML are, it is simplest and main feature is that we can create the web page dynamically. By using hypertext markup language, we can create static web pages. By using this dynamic HTML, we can create dynamically. The second feature is dynamic style is a feature. It allows the users to change or alter the font size, color and content of the web page based on the user requirements. It provides the facility of using the events, methods and properties. The dynamic HTML uses events, methods and properties. It provides the facility for using all these features, and it also provides the feature of code reusability. Here we doesn't need to write the code repeatedly. We can use the same code, and it reduces the lines of code and increases the readability. It also provides the feature in browsers for data binding. The data binding means the users can manipulate the web page elements using a web browser. The DHTML users can easily create dynamic fonts for their websites or web pages. Here, the users can easily change the tags and properties and the dynamic fonts in their web page or websites. It provides the facility for using these features, and the web page functionality is enhanced because the DHTML uses low bandwidth effect. The DHTML uses low bandwidth effect, that's why the functionality is increased in the dynamic HTML. Coming to the uses of the DHTML, where we can use DHTML is to design the animated and interviewed web pages in the real life. And the DHTML helps users by animating the text and images in their document. Here we can animate the text and images in their document. It is very helpful for the users, and the DHTML allows the users for adding the effects on their pages and including the drop-down menus and rollover buttons. Coming to the advantages of the DHTML, those websites and web pages which are created using this concept are fast. It performs fastest operations on those websites which are created using this dynamic HTML. There is no plugin is required to create the web page dynamically. Here, they doesn't need to require any special software to view it. Due to the low bandwidth effect by the dynamic HTML, the web page functionality is enhanced. Here we already discussed it uses low bandwidth effect. That's why the functionality is enhanced, it means improved. The concept provides advanced functionality than the static HTML. It is capable of holding more content on the web page at the same time. It is highly flexible and the user can make the changes easily in the web page. Here, the users can make the changes whenever he wants. Coming to the disadvantages, the scripts of the DHTML doesn't run properly in various web browsers. Or in the simple words we can say, the various web browsers do not support the DHTML. It is only supported by the latest browsers. In those latest browsers only we can run properly in the various browsers. Those browsers which doesn't run properly in the old versions. The coding of these websites that are created using this DHTML is long and complex. The coding is very complex and long using the DHTML. For understanding, the DHTML users must know about HTML, CSS and JavaScript. If any user doesn't know about these languages, then it is time consuming and long process in itself. To know about this DHTML, the user must know about this HTML, cascading style sheets and JavaScript. Otherwise, it is very time consuming process.
Hello everyone, I am Chandu. Today we are going to discuss dynamic HTML events. An event is defined as changing the occurrence of an object. It is compulsory to add the events in the dynamic HTML page. Without events, there will be no dynamic content on the HTML page. The event is a term in the HTML which triggers the actions in the web browsers. There are 3 examples of events. Let us see now. First one, click a button. Second one, submitting a form. Third one, an image loading or a web page loading. Next, we will see the 5 functions in dynamic HTML events. First one, on about. When it occurs when the user aborts the page or media file loading. Next one, on submit. It is triggered when the user clicks a button after the submission of a form. Third one, on change. It occurs when the user changes or updates the value of an object. Fourth one, on click. It occurs or triggers when any user clicks on an HTML element. Fifth one, on double click. It occurs when the user clicks on an HTML element 2 times together. Let us see an example of a program with JavaScript and HTML event. First we write the dynamic HTML with JavaScript in the title tag, and then we write the JavaScript in the script tag. Then we call the function date and time. In that function we again call the function alert date, and we change the background color to orange, and we increase the font size to 4, and we change the font color to blue. Then we write the information we need in the center tag. Click here, and we call the onClick function is equal to date and time, and date and time will be printed in the output screen. So to check the today's date and time, after writing this code, the output will be click here at hashtag date and time. When we click the date and time hyperlink, we will get the date and time displayed on the output screen. We will see the interview questions. First question, how to handle events with dynamic HTML? Event is used to trigger actions in the browser. When client click on the element, associated action will be started, and JavaScript will started when click on element. Using event handler, we can do like that. When an event occur, it will execute code associated with the element. What is the use of a date object in JavaScript? The JavaScript date object can be used to get a year, month and day. You can display a timer on the web page by the help of JavaScript date object. Let us see the function in this question. Function display where date is equal to new date, where day is equal to date dot get date, document dot write is equal to date is, and then the last display. And last question, give some examples of an event handler in the dynamic HTML. First one, on click. Second one, on submit. Third one, on double click. Thank you all.
Hello everyone, my name is J. Karan. My topic is dynamic HTML with JavaScript. We use JavaScript to make the HTML page more dynamic. We can add JavaScript in 2 ways. First, we can add in internal or external way. The internal way, we can use the script tag in head or body in HTML page, or we can externally add a file with .js extension. In source file, we can add URL of the JavaScript page, we can add a script tag in the body tag, where we can use the src tag for adding the URL of the new page where JavaScript code will be written. Here in the example you can see document.write. Here the document.write means that in a current window, it is a current window object from which we can call many functions like write and get element ID or anything. In the next example we can see that an example program where a simple program is written. Here the JavaScript, we have written the type as a JavaScript type. In that, the document.write will call, the document is the current window page, and the .write is a function of that object. Here the in write we can see that in double quotes we have written dynamic HTML with JavaScript. Here in the output screen, when we run this in the HTML file, we can see in the Chrome output has the dynamic HTML with JavaScript. It's a simple program where we can show and we can write anything in the write file, and it can be shown in the output screen. Next example, we can see now some examples of JavaScript with dynamic HTML. Here the first program is we will change the color of the text. When we click on a button, there are two buttons, as we can see in the output screen. There are two buttons, green and blue, and the text written as this text changes color when they click on the following different buttons. There are two buttons. When we click on the green button, the text will be changed into green, and when we click on the blue button, the text will change in the blue. Here in the code we can see that we have written a paragraph tag where ID is demo. Here demo is the ID of paragraph we have to change. When the button green will be clicked, a change color function will be called. The change function color, here we can see that here is a function definition where we have taken an attribute as new color. Here the new color, first when we click on the green button, the green keyword will be passed on the new color, and the new color value is now green, and we can change that by document.getElementID. The getElementID will just give the ID of the demo, and that means paragraph. Here we will change the style of that paragraph into a new color. Here new color is, first when you click on the green button, the green value will be passed and the color will be changed into green, and the same has blue button. When we click on the blue button, a blue value is passed to that function, and the new color value will be blue, and then the color of the paragraph will change into blue. So we can see in the example, when the green button is clicked, the text will be green. Now next example. In the next example, we can see that a simple example program where we enter name and roll number, and this when we will click on the submit button, a new alert dialog box will be open in the current page, which will show name plus the string your form is submitted. Here we can see we have used the input file as text, and enter an ID as a name and roll number as number, and a submit value. When the submit button will be clicked, here we can see in the form on submit, the submit form function will be called. When the submit form function will be called, then here we have declared a variable as name. In the name we can store the value of what the user enters. When the user enters, that it will be stored in the name ID, and the value is stored on the name. In the next line we can see alert program alert function is there, where we are adding a name plus a string. The string is here, your form is submitted. We can see in the output screen, here the enter your name. Here Rohan name was entered, and our roll number is entered 68. When we click on the submit button, our alert box will be open in that page, and we can see here Rohan, a name is passed, and your form is submitted will be shown. This is simple example where we can see the alert dialog box. The next example. Now, next example, we can see that we can see first output, a text input where a user enters the marks, and when he click on the find grade, the grades will be shown. Here is starts. Here is a paragraph where enter the percentage of a student was written. First input was a text, and the ID is percentage. When the user enter the percentage, a button was there. When we click on the button, the check grade function will be called. Here is the definition of the check grade. In the check grade, we have declared a variable x, p, and text. Here p, the percentage will be stored on the p, and the p value will be changed into int and stored in the x. Here is the if else statement was called. If the x value is greater than 90 and less than 100, which means that we have get a A1 grade. So the get element ID demo, the paragraph demo will be called. the get element ID will give the paragraph which having the demo, and the inner HTML means we can add there any text. Here we have added A1, and when the x value is greater than 80, in the else if block we can see the x value is greater than 80 or less than 90, we will call the same method and give the A2 as a inner HTML. Like this we can add for the next one, else if, where x value is greater than 70 and less than 80. Here the grade will be A3. Now we can see in the output screen, when the user enters the 89 and he click the find grade, and function will be called check grade, and the p value stored will be 89, and 89 check on the second else if block, and the given string will be A2. Then we can see in the output screen A2 was displayed. And the next example, it's 99. When the percentage is 99, it will go on the in the first if condition, where x is greater than 90 and x is less than 100, and it will be shown as A1. We can see in the output screen. Next, the example programs are over. Now we can see the interview questions. Here the first interview question is, what is the document object in HTML? As I said, document object is the current window object. Here we can see, when a HTML document is loaded into web browser, it becomes a document object. The document object is a root node of the HTML document. The document object is a property of a window object. The document object is accessed. We can access that document object by using document.getElement.id, get element by ID, or document.write. Document, we can say that a object of that current page. The next question is, how to add JavaScript file externally. As I said at the starting, we can add it in two ways, internally or externally. Externally we can add in the script tag, where the attribute is src, and we can give the URL or name of the JavaScript file where the script was written. And the next question is, third question, explain about the DOM, document get element by ID. Get element by ID is a function of document where we can it will return a ID of when we pass here ID, it will return the ID. The get element by ID method returns an element with a specified value. The get element method returns null if there is does not exist any element. Here we can see in the example, change color of element having ID demo. Document.element by ID demo style will change the color of it by red. Thank you. This